Welcome, everybody. This is the, wait a minute, we have to wait for the, are we on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll repeat my lines. Welcome, everybody. This is the first meeting of the Goffstown Capital Improvements Program. I'd like to welcome everybody back, and the addition of Lauren as the Budget Committee member. As we usually do, for the benefit of the many people, I won't estimate them, watching us, we'll introduce ourselves, starting with you, Joanne. We'll go around the room.
I'm Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
Derek Horn, Town Administrator.
Brad Parker, Community Member at Large.
Kayla Bruss, Community Member at Large and Recording Secretary.
I'm Jim Raymond. I'm the chair.
Kimberly Peace.
Dan O'Connell, Community Member at Large.
Jim Craig, Select Board Representative, Member.
Ellen Vermakowitz, School Board Rep.
And sitting in the audience is...
Oh, we got Lauren as well.
Oh, Lauren, we didn't get you. I thought we didn't start with you. I introduced you, but I didn't actually let you introduce yourself. So.
It's all good. Thank you.
Okay.
Lauren Dukas, Budget Committee Rep.
Thank you.
And Sean Murray, Fire Chief.
Oh, you'll see more of him on the camera in a few minutes. Okay, thank you. As I said, this is the Capital Improvements Program Committee. It's an committee appointed by the Planning Board. It's an advisory committee that does a report on the, I guess call them proposed capital improvements for the town that then is either approved, amended, typically approved by the Planning Board, and goes to the Budget Committee, the Select Board, and the School Board for their consideration. In your handbooks, on page, I guess it's page, under the red tab,
They're all different colors.
Oh, okay. Under my red tab, oh, not me, of course. The first section, there's a very good description of what we do, why we do it, and our statutory authority for doing it. I'm not going to read it. You all can read it. Is this available on the town's website? Do you know if people want to know what we do, the handbook?
Yes, it is. It's under committees, municipal committees, and then the capital improvement programs. The handbook is available on the town website.
Okay, so people can look at in a little more detail of what we're doing. But Joanne, I'd like you to briefly, to refresh our recollections, that's a lawyer term, what projects are subject to our review, and then when you're done that, the rating system of priorities, if you can just summarize those quickly for us.
Okay. I believe it's 25,000. It hasn't changed.
Derek, you can coach her if you want.
It's any capital item greater than, or 25,000 or greater, that the departments are requesting for a 6-year period, and those years are laid out so that the board and the select board can see what the plan is for the following 6 years. Main concentration is on 2023 this time around, and then they do look at the out years to make sure that there are no big dips or increases, so things are leveled out more appropriately. However, sometimes that can't be avoided, but sometimes it does smooth out as the years get closer to the out years. So.
And then we also have vehicles that have a life of at least 3 years, as well as any studies. So if somebody were going to do any studies for land or architectural studies for buildings, that's at least $10,000 that will result in a capital improvement. Those are usually put on the matrix as well.
Okay. And then why don't you, either one of you, Derek, review briefly the priorities, which appear on page 7 of our introductory.
Yes, so these priorities were updated by the CIP committee, I think 2 years ago. Priority 1 is urgent, cannot be delayed, it's needed for the immediate health or safety of the community. 2 would be necessary, needed within 3 years. 3 is desirable, needed within 4 to 6 years to improve quality or level of service. Priority 4 is deferrable. It could be placed on hold until after the 6-year scope of CIP. 5 is premature, needs more research or planning. Sometimes you'll see those if a department is starting to think about a project but doesn't have a whole lot of detail. And then priority 6 is inconsistent. That's contrary to land use planning. You most likely would not see that from an actual department head, but as you'll be moving the matrix forward, the CIP committee could, I guess, sort of reduce the priority down to a priority 6.
Lauren, have you seen the matrix before, or is this your first introduction?
I have
to it?
seen a bit of the town. I'm more familiar with the school side. I served on the facilities planning committee,
Okay.
so we had a lot to do with the CIP for school side.
For your benefit, in your notebook, you'll see the reports, or what do you call these things?
Submission sheets.
Okay. And they do what, Derek?
They lay out, they describe the project and how they fit into the town's overall master plan. They also talk about the total appropriation, what year it would be in, and also the funding source.
Okay. And then from those, you can phrase this better than I can, they also appear on the matrix. So why don't you link the two and how that?
Yes, so all the departments in the school submit their sheets to us here at Town Hall, and then we enter those into the matrix. This year, starting off, we've got 9 pages. All the rows and columns are labeled. So in column H, we try and put in what the adopted budget, not necessarily what was in the adopted CIP matrix, but instead what was in the adopted budget that got approved at town meeting, or in the case of the school. And then as we work left to right, you'll see the proposed in those, what's proposed in 2023 as well as in the 6 years. And we break them out for the town. We do vehicles first for each department, and we total all the vehicles, and then we have projects for every department, including the sewer commission. And then the schools break theirs out by the school, which school they're gonna be at.
So for most things, we have a report and a line entry. I assume for vehicles, we do not, and some of the routine replacement items, are they?
Yes, so you will not necessarily have a vehicle sheet for a vehicle that appears on the matrix, but that is not ready for replacement. DPW on page 3, they'll list out their entire fleet. Actually, nope, they just have the ones that are due for replacement, I'm sorry. They have all theirs that are due for replacement, whereas the fire department has all of their apparatus shown, and the police department have their cruisers and everything shown, even though they might not be due for replacement.
So don't freak out when you see the long list. Let me tell you what we are not and then what we are. We have to remind ourselves, we are not the budget committee, we are not the select board, and we are not the school board, and we are not the voters. So our job is to tee up in a format that we think is useful with our recommendations. This is my view, you can overrule me, the capital improvements that are necessary to keep the town going as proposed by the staff, and they're very good at this, the department chairs. But we don't make any ultimate decisions on whether or not to build them, buy them, do them. That goes to the boards and then to the voters. Which also means we shouldn't be saying, well, the town won't vote for that, therefore we won't put it on the matrix. We may consider it, but again, our role is to present what we think is necessary and let them in their infinite wisdom make final decisions. And for example, we could say we need X number of police vehicles to protect us or patrol the streets. the voters in their infinite wisdom can say, we don't need police protection, no, we're not gonna do that. Now, you get into some finer questions, a new swimming pool, for example, when do we put that? But we just have to remember, we are not the ultimate deciders of what gets adopted. We're making a recommendation based on what we think would be the capital needs of the town. And we have to keep reminding ourselves of that, because it's easy to slip into the role of the other boards. Similarly, and some prior boards have not honored this role, I don't think it's our role to tell the department chairs how to do their jobs. That's the school board and the select board. And so we kind of stay away from saying, oh, they say, we may make recommendations and comments if we have some strong views, but again, we're not their bosses, we're a planning group. So there's lines we shouldn't cross, but sometimes those lines are a little fuzzy and we recognize that. So, is that a fair statement? Okay, what we are is, this is the best board to be on because we get to see everything. I mean, how much more fun can that be? We get to talk to all the guys in the fire trucks and the power trucks and parks and recs, and I can't think of a better thing to do. So, with that introduction, Derek, why don't you tell us what we're going to do? And since Sean got here first, we want to get him in and out if we can.
Yeah, you have three departments that we'll present tonight. You have the fire department, you have Parks and Rec, and then you have Town Hall.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chair.
Let me, while you're sitting down, for the benefit of the public who are not here in numbers, this is not a hearing. We don't take public comment. This is, our board is a planning board, planning not in the capital P sense. When it goes before the planning board in capital letters, what they do with it is different. But we take comment from the proposals from the department chairs. So if people are on television are wondering, should they come in and be heard? The answer is, you may come in, but you will not be heard, because this is not a hearing. We are an information gathering from the presenters, being the department chairs. And we understand that. So, Sean, you've had a chance to settle in. Why don't you reintroduce yourself, and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Sean Murray. I'm your fire chief here in town. I started in January in an interim position and was humbled to change that into a full-time position effective May 1st. I have over 40 years in the fire service. Am familiar with CIP programs. Seen some good ones, seen some bad ones, but to us they're a very effective tool to be able to take a look at the future, and especially with the cost of fire apparatus these days. And I'm sure you'll see in the matrices that they're up around at least above 750,000. So our capital plan this year basically is looking at two areas. One of them is,
Sean, just a minute, Derek, why don't you tell us where to look on the matrix?
We're going to start with with vehicles.
sure,
So your vehicles are on page 2 of 9. And just to reiterate, if you look at column H, you'll see what was in the adopted budget approved by the voters. There was a replacement of engine number 4 that was offset with the use of capital reserve funds. And then there was also on line 50, it shows a $250,000 from the EMS fund. That is an error, so I've made a note to correct that. That was actually one that we purchased an ambulance in 2021, so I missed that doing the matrix. So that
Does
one
this
will,
come off?
yeah. So that negative 250 on line 50 will come off, and I'll make a correction for the future. But then on line 51, there's the special article for the fire apparatus capital reserve fund, and that would be, how to fund that will be determined by the select board or budget committee moving forward.
Before, Sean, I'll keep interrupting you. Before we go on, Derek's used the term capital reserve fund. Do you all remember what that is? I'll give you a quiz on but the different ways we finance. Why don't you give us the quick rundown of capital reserve, bonding, leasing, just so
So-
when we get into Sean's presentation, we can put it into context.
Yep, so a capital reserve fund is kind of like a savings account for a very specific capital purchase. It must be approved at town meeting, and the town has historically deposited into this specific capital reserve fund annually at town meeting to avoid any spikes in the tax rate for these expensive apparatus. They've also been used to offset grants. So you're saving up ahead of time before the purchase. In some cases, when we did the Station 18 bond, that was where you are borrowing money rather than setting it aside ahead of time, and you're paying it off with an agreed upon term and interest rate. So that's actually in. You do have an outstanding debt schedule in yours that shows where the bonds for the town are. And then, what was the other item? You said?
Leasing.
Leasing. Yeah, the town historically has not participated in leasing. So we don't have a lot of experience here in this town, but that is an option that must go before town meeting as well.
So, the ways to pay for this: appropriations, pay cash in the barrelhead, put it into capital reserve fund, of which there are different varieties. Bond it, which is borrowing. Leasing, which is a form of financing, but we don't do that. What did I leave out?
The only other one would be grants. You will see, especially on the school side, the school has some grants that are not available to the town. And then the only other one that I know that's highlighted in a couple different projects, and I'll speak to one this evening, are capital campaigns or donations. You'll see that when the library presents to you, and again, you'll see one that I present this evening.
Jim?
Did you say that there's bond information in the matrix?
It's not in the matrix, but it is in your binder. It's in the matrix section. There's an outstanding debt schedule for the town, sewer commission, and school district to kind of show you what we have out there for bonds, really. The only one the town is carrying is the Fire Station 18 bond. There is a betterment bond for the water that went down into Lynchville and Danis Park, but that is repaid to the town by the property owners that benefited from that.
We also have impact fees, which may,
Yes, impact fees. Impact fees, when a new residence is constructed, they pay an impact fee for schools, roads, public safety, and parks and rec. And those get set aside in a designated account, and the town has 4 years to spend those funds on a, is it 6 years? Okay. 6 years to spend those funds on something that builds capacity, basically, because as you're bringing in more residents to the town, you need to provide more roads, more public safety, more parks and recs, and more schools.
so that's an ordinance that we simply adopted. Ellen?
Yes, under
Yeah.
funding source, there's EMS. Is that part of the CRF or is that something else?
So the town has, you'll see on the town side, you'll see general fund, that is raised through taxation and other revenues. You see the EMS fund, that is a separate fund that is paid for by anybody that uses the ambulance services, whether through their healthcare, their health insurance, or paying the bill to basically ride the ambulance. And then the last one you'll see is the sewer fund, that's paid by sewer users. So the EMS fund and sewer have no tax impact.
Dan, you had a question?
So the impact fees, is that typically on a large development, or is it a single dwelling as well?
It's for any time a dwelling unit is created. So if somebody comes in and builds a single family house, they pay it. If somebody adds an accessory dwelling unit, they pay it. It ranges on what type of development it is. And the planning board has had professionals come in and help them determine what the appropriate amount to charge each town.
It's to reflect the capital cost to the town that results from that development. It's not as opposed to just passing on operating costs, it's for capital costs.
Yeah, I remember the discussion last year, I just didn't know if it was for, maybe 4 or 5 homes, or if it was a single dwelling as well, so.
No,
I
it's
was curious.
Joanne can talk about it, but per,
And it's only for residential.
so. Anyway, Sean, yeah,
I'm sorry,
Focus.
a brief question. The Goffstown High School bond, that was paid out, why does it still appear on the outstanding debt schedule?
It was, last year was the last year that it was paid out, so I kept it on it for this year to show that it was all paid out, and I think next year what we'll do is probably reflect that they have no other debt, but yeah, that was fully paid out.
The school district has no bond debt.
Sean, are you bored yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Quick one. I want to get him out of
Quick
here, poor
question.
guy.
The money that goes into the CR Capital Reserve Fund, that's actually raised by taxation with the 250,000 or whatever it is each year. I think it's 250.
So historically, I would say over the last 5 to 10 years, it has been funded through the use of unassigned fund balance.
Okay.
So that is either taxes collected that are not spent by the town or extra revenues that are collected. So it's a mix of both.
But you could do an appropriation.
You could,
Make it do that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, Sean.
Sorry, John.
Thank you. No problem at all. If everyone's looking at the vehicle matrix, I'd just like to give you a couple updates, and I will forward a corrected sheet. It has to just do with mileage and hours. So if you see car 1, the 2015 Chev Tahoe, the mileage on that is 40,550. And the hours is 1,153. That should be, is that blank on your sheet?
So I did not update that in the matrix, the hours, so
Okay.
we can update that for a future one, yes.
And then engine 2, which is the 2012 engine, that was out of service when we made up the list, but the mileage is 18,517. And the hours are 4,657.4.
One of the things we've talked about in the past, if you recall, is on equipment like this, hours can be, are more important than miles. You might touch on
Yes.
that, Sean, explain
Yes.
why that is. 'Cause
So-
we've had committee members in the past, including one select board member, who couldn't grasp that concept.
So with the hours, if you take a fire engine and it's operating at a fire, right, it's pumping water, and it can do that for many hours, then you get a true sense of how much work that engine is doing versus just using the mileage. And also on the ambulances too, because of the large amount of electronics and power it needs for all the systems on board, when they are at a scene and the lights are on, the vehicle automatically idles up to maintain the battery charge on it. So those, that's why the hours are so important. You're getting a look at actually operating time versus driving time.
Jim?
I actually looked at these beforehand, but you got engine 1, condition new with 90,000 miles and 3,000 hours on it. Is that a typo? How does that work?
Unfortunately, it isn't. The increase in the amount of calls and the traveling they've been doing over the past couple of years since they've received it, since the last 4 years, is significant. But what you'll see us do in the future is, we usually give it a year or two to break it in, and then we'll start switching the engines around to try and bring at least some sort of balance on the mileage. The other thing I just want to bring to your attention is if you look down at the ambulances, you see them listed as ambulance 2, ambulance 1, and ambulance 3. So ambulance 2, a 2020 International ambulance, unfortunately was involved in a accident. And if you were to look at it, you'd say, wow, it's not a lot of damage. However, from the accident, it actually bent the frame of the ambulance. So the insurance carrier has totaled it. And we are currently searching for a replacement one. So it's kind of bittersweet in that, you know, we hopefully we'll be able to replace it with a new ambulance, and that'll change, you know, that part of the matrix down the road. So, and then we list for you all our other apparatus, if anyone has any questions on that.
I have a question. I have a question. So I see that, I'm looking at the one from our binder, that you have the spill trailer and the boat are both listed as only fair condition, but I don't see those going out here past 2028. So are they okay to be in fair condition for the next 5 years?
So, yes, the boat, which one are you looking at? Is it the 2006?
So it says, yes, 2006, it's shown as fair.
So actually, in this case, being fair, it is in good condition.
Okay.
Enough where there's nothing wrong with it that we fear it's gonna fail and not be of use to us, you know.
Okay, and then the same for the spill trailer?
So the spill trailer was on this year's replacement schedule.
Oh, it is?
It was.
It was.
It was.
However, I've recommended that we remove it because, again, I'm convinced that the current trailer that we have is in good enough shape to maintain it and not need to replace it.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you.
No,
A quick question about that ambulance that was involved in the accident. Was that someone else's insurance fault, or was that a town liability?
It was someone else's, fortunately.
I'm just curious. Thank you.
Should I tell Sean now? You've gone through, you didn't go through this. Usually we require some reward, like going up in the ladder truck or something, but I'll just let you ponder that as you go through the rest of this.
You will have to line up with Selectman Craig, because he's already asked to ride on the fire truck.
Okay.
With an ice cream.
Right.
So just-
Wait a minute, I wanted to drive one of those.
And you've got a CDL license.
Okay, I'm gonna roll everybody out of order. Go ahead, Sean.
So we are taking reservations. Okay, Eric should.
So I guess the one item that the chief does have in 2023, you'll see on both the matrix but also in the fire tab, is a replacement of utility truck number 2, which is a 2009 Ford F-350. And that would come from, right now it's proposed as tax appropriation. That would not come from the fire apparatus capital reserve fund.
But what determines that, whether it does or it doesn't?
I think typically the fire department has used the fire apparatus capital reserve fund for the larger projects, for your engines, your pumpers. Eventually there's a tower out, I think it's probably another 8 or 9, it's out there, but
Right.
It's really been for those. The one that was just purchased, what was the purchase price of the one that you just put a contract in on?
705,000, which we were allocated 775, so I was real happy the way that came out.
For engine 4, is that the one
Yes.
that you're replacing?
Yep.
Good.
Ellen?
Yeah, line 41. That is the 70,000 for the utility 2 pickup truck.
Correct.
70,000 for 2023, but it's determined a priority that is deferrable. So is that priority wrong? It's deferrable, it can put off.
I'm gonna defer to Derek, only because it's my first year and he may have the history on that.
No, that's again, a good catch, thank you, Ellen. That's a mistake. The fire department submitted it with a class 2 necessary, so I'll make that correction, and I apologize for that. Yeah, it should actually be a 2 necessary.
Okay, so my question with regard to the priority numbers, what is the purpose of their use as this process goes forward.
Why do we have them?
Yeah,
Typically, and Derek can speak to this, we've put the higher numbers earlier. You know, like for example, call last year, some of the emergency stuff. We moved it ahead because we said, well, the public works renovation, we said that should be done right away. See, it's really assigning it a 1. If it's less critical now, it can be in the, move back in time. The
okay,
risk
so
is,
when we
yeah.
get to our end and we're moving things around.
Yeah, we take that into consideration because as Joanne and Derek spoke to, one of the goals of this process is to the extent possible, even out tax impact, to avoid bulges and dips. That you're gonna have some, but to avoid them. So by playing with the priorities, you can do that, and also just where to put it in the matrix. The risk is if you put something, say a 4, it just gets kicked down the road forever. It never gets done. And at some point, you have to look back and say, well, is that really still a 4, or has it gone on long enough to move it up? So I don't want us to be frozen on the priorities. It's just a tool on how to put them into the matrix. Yeah. Go ahead, Sean.
And then the only other project, if there's no questions on apparatus, is, it's not the project, it's the request of $250,000 for the apparatus capital reserve fund. And that's been almost consistently supported, again, trying to raise the funds because of the cost of apparatus. And in that 8 to 10 year period with that tower, I bet you we're gonna see a $1.4 million apparatus for replacement, so.
So the question for you is that a appropriate number, or should it be revisited to change the amount?
I think the fire chief will have to look at that in coming years. I think with the funds that were spent out of it this year, again, there was an appropriation of $775,000, but it came in, the fire department did a good job being very frugal with the use of that. So for at least for next year, I think 250 is appropriate, and then at some point they can look at what the cost of some of their upcoming apparatus and if adjustments need to be made. Right now, it's just shown as 250,000 in each year going out.
Okay. Sean has a very good summary on page 2 of what's going to be coming up in future years. Do you want to touch on any of those, Sean, even though we don't need to?
Sure. So again, in 2023, we have that capital reserve and replacement of the 2009 Ford. In 2024, I'm glad you asked about this, because we'll again ask for this $250,000 each year, you know, going forward. But we recently were able to get a grant for replacement defibrillators, and so we're projecting we can remove the cardiac defibrillators in 2024, and we'll need capital reserve funds for it.
Okay.
So we'll make that adjustment to the matrix, because that is in the fire projects on line 114. But we just received actual notification this afternoon that the state would be allowing use of federal funds for that purchase.
What page are we looking at?
It's page 4 of 9. On page 14, you'll see there's an appropriation of $45,000 in 2022 as well as 2024. But using those federal funds that are available, we're going to purchase both this year.
Okay. Helen?
Yeah, how much is currently in the CRF for the fire department?
That is a great question. Give me a second and I will give you an exact answer.
Okay.
I apologize for not having that already.
While he's looking it up, Sean, why don't you go through the overview of the other stuff that will come on.
Okay, in 2025, again, the apparatus capital reserve request for $250,000. We will be asking for a replacement of a 2017 ambulance. and a replacement of the 2015, one of the command vehicles. And then moving out further, in 2026, 250,000 again, we'll be replacing the 2005 engine, which is engine 6. And there is a placeholder there for the Mass Road Fire Station renovation.
Quick question on that.
Yeah.
Did the survey come back yet on that, or is it?
This is the Penardville Station.
Correct. Didn't we approve, or didn't we request a survey, or did that?
That was, I think, the one that was a separate article at town meeting?
Correct.
That was Station 17, which is up on the east side off of Black Brook and Terrell Hill.
Now, is that the one that has the floors that are bowing as they go in and out?
No, that is the Mass Road, the Penardville one.
Okay. So
And maybe the chief can talk to the floor issue. I know that.
Matter of fact, we have contractors in there now. There was 50,000 allocated for the apparatus bay floors, and they've replaced the drains, and they are currently putting a new epoxy type floor on it in the bathroom and the main floor. So that's one step closer, you know. That apparatus floor has been there since it was built back in 1975.
Derek, did you come up with a number for?
I did, yes. So prior to the select board approving purchase of the pumper a few weeks ago, the balance of the capital reserve fund was just over $1.1 million. But again, that purchase is a $700,000 purchase. So I show that the calculated balance would be $439,280.06. But again, that might be off a little bit due to interest from the end of April into May. So about 439 is currently in that capital reserve fund.
Okay.
I have a question. So I don't know if I'm jumping ahead of you. So it looks like in 2026 we have an $800,000 engine and the $1.6 million Mass Road Station. Is there any way to shift those so we don't have, those are two big ticket items in the same year?
I'm going to ask for the honeymoon period.
Just something to think about, I
No,
suppose.
it certainly is something that, you know, I'm sure the Board of Selectmen too are going to want to discuss and look at too. Because you're right, you know, it's a $1.8 million between the two of them. And sometimes we can, sometimes the fire apparatus, you know, will get close to the replacement date, and we're lucky that it, you know, well, we're not lucky, we do a lot of service and maintenance on them, but, and then you can, you know, you can move them out a year or two.
Okay.
So that would be something that would have to be, you know, we should look at each year to see how our fleet is doing.
But you described the Mass Road as much a placeholder as anything at this point. I'm assuming you don't have any plans at Chapter 7.
No, we do not.
Yeah, okay. That's good. So, Ellen?
With the CRF, and maybe I'm mis-adding these up, but with the balance that Derek just gave us and 6 years of 250,000, at the, what is it, the 2028 year, there'll be $1,439,000 in the CRF, but there's a $1,400,000. Am I reading that? Am I doing that right? 400,000 in expenses. So that's going to pull it really tight.
Yeah, well, that's one that I think, as Derek indicated, they'll look at that number
Yeah.
going forward, because I suspect it will change, and these costs will go up over time as well, as
Right.
Sean pointed out.
Okay.
Okay. Is that it, Sean? I don't want to hold you.
Yeah, I think that's all we have.
Okay. I commend you on the presentation, the written one. It's very good. If you took time to read that, it set the stage nicely, and it's well done. So it makes our job and your presentation that much easier.
And certainly I'd like to invite the committee to stop by anytime, you know, if you want to see these, the apparatus or the stations to, you know, give you another perspective. I'd be happy to give you a tour.
Okay, good, thank you. Thank you, Sean, for coming in.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? We just sent them packing, but I didn't want to cut anybody off. You all good? We can always call people back, or ask them to come back. Can't call them. We can ask them to come back. We have questions, so do that. So, good, thank you.
Thank you, good evening.
Yeah. Well, Derek, do you want to pull your weight and go first, or should we get the Parks and Rec to do theirs?
Oh, no, we'll have Rick go first.
Okay. Rick has done this before, but while Rick's getting settled, why don't you, Derek, point out where on the matrix we're going to be looking?
So there is a separate tab for Parks and Rec that has all the project sheets in there, but if you look on the matrix that was distributed this evening, Rick has one vehicle, which is on page 3. That's line number 90. And then his projects are on page 5 of 9, starting at line 170. So maybe Rick can start off with the vehicles and then move on to the projects.
Okay, Rick, why don't you introduce your full name, because your signature is so clear when we get these reports.
Did I sign it? Did I even sign it?
You did.
I think you used a trained monkey, but anyway.
Rick Wilhelmy, I'm the Parks and Recreation Director for the town of Goffstown. Been having the most enjoyable time of 12 years, and it's a great place to be. This is probably the most difficult thing to present to everybody and anybody when it deals with money. But we have a wonderful community, and we got to keep it going. Let's see. So why don't we start? What I thought I would do is, yes, I'll start with the vehicle, but I was going to kind of go chronologically. So 2023, and then we'll go all the way throughout to 2028. Okay. So what the Parks and Rec Commissioners, they actually met last week or 2 weeks ago, and had a really good session. What we would like to do is in 2023, the dump body, F-350 dump body truck, move that to 2023. That actually is a $70,000 cost. I think in years prior it was listed as a $49,000 cost, but welcome to the whole COVID and welcome to the world of reality. And here we are. So we moved that. It was scheduled to be a 2024. Our current vehicle has about 55,000 miles on it. Miles will never be an issue. The condition of the body will absolutely be the issue. And that's what we're seeing. Our 2012 F-350 at this current time is the dump body itself. We just redid the internal metal portion of it with some new metal and things like that. Got it going. I don't know how much longer we're going to keep that going. You know, the vehicle, 12 years, it's getting tired. So anyhow, that's in there, and it's a $70,000 cost for 2023. Okay? Any questions on that?
What do you use that for?
Every day's work. Every single day's work. It hauls it's hauling all the mowers, it's hauling the trailers, it's hauling the tractor, it's hauling loam, it's hauling trash. Actually, you guys got to come and watch how we do trash. You really honestly do. And if anybody has any more ideas about putting trash cans out, please think about that before you make that suggestion. Because we're the poor suckers that have to clean it up. And it's old school. Bag of trash, throw it up in the truck. All the water from all the wonderful things that are in that dripping all over you. Come on in, watch us. It's great.
Garbage juice.
So, yeah, anyhow, so I have some really good pictures with that trucker block full of nice looking bags. Anyhow, it's used heavily. A very, very key part to what we do. And I think in the out years, I might even make a suggestion of adding another vehicle. But I won't get you scared just yet. So that's, we good there? Okay. Now I'll move to 2024. Okay, so now we'll go to your other page there. If you go to page 5 of 9, excuse me. So now you're into kind of more or less the facilities. All right. As you all know, one of the big tickets. Unfortunately, there's some very big tickets, very large tickets in this in the out years for this department, and that one of them being the new pool. 1970 something, those pools were built, so 40 plus years they've been moving along and they're working. The outbuildings are the same age. Nothing's really been done. Maybe a little vinyl siding on the side to make it look good. It looks good. But anyhow, so, and I think the pool's probably been in this matrix now for, oh gosh, probably
Since 2011, you've got it.
2011. There you go. Okay, so the notification of it, the time is coming. That was originally, and you can see, I don't know if you have that information, when I included it in this nice little packet here, I included everything that was given to us from the feasibility study in 2019, 2020, from Weston Sampson. That was all presented last year too, but I think you all have that info.
Yes.
Yes. So this kind of struck a really interesting chord with the Parks and Rec commissioners and others, because quite honestly, we're going to be asked, well, how do you suggest to pay for that? I think that is a level well beyond the Parks and Rec commissioners and well beyond the director of Parks and Recreation, and maybe even well beyond the CIP committee. I think we really got to sit down and think, this is a need, it needs to be fixed, it's a very large sum of money, but I think we all got to put our brains together and figure out how do you best make that work.
Derek, I'm going to look to you. I'm going to assume, to the extent they're not raised by grants, that this would be bonded.
Yes, you'd either need to do, there is a portion that Rick has identified where there is a small portion that can be funded through grants.
So we looked at all different kinds of funding for something like this. We can, and actually I did meet with the state representative who deals with the Federal Water Conservation Fund. It's a federal grant. It's up to a $500,000 grant. We could absolutely apply for something like that. And I've already met with them. They looked at this project and they said, absolutely, this project meets that criteria. You would go into the competitive market with others, and if you get it, you get it. You don't, kind of thing. But that's $500,000.
Yeah, so the remaining would be either bond, or the town would need to start pretty quick of starting to set funds aside in a capital reserve.
Yeah, they don't have much time.
Yeah, we do not, no.
So with that in mind, the commissioners spent a lot of time on this discussion. If you look at it, you have $4 million for the pool. We still haven't finished the sports complex, which is another $2 million, $1 million for each phase. There's 3 phases in that. We completed phase 1, as we all know. And Goffstown Grizzly football got the chance to use it in the fall. Travel soccer used it now in the spring. So it's working, all right? But there's still 2 other phases, and each phase is roughly about $1 million a piece for the work that has to be done. So $4 million, $2 million, there's $6 million. And then we recognize some other things within our recreational building after the COVID experience. Has anybody ever been in that building?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
So I probably ought to make a statement right now. I serve on the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Yeah.
But there's no airflow. There's no.
It's hot as hell.
There's no air. There's nothing. It's stagnant. We have a warehouse fan that you can turn on, and you can't turn it on in the winter time, because if you turn it on in the winter time, the reversed situation happens with the heating system. I found this out. All of a sudden, I got smoke bellowing down the hallway. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? So you turn the fan on, the smoke is is now being pulled, instead of going out the chimney, it comes out that little damper. So now it's coming out the damper. It's like, whoa, mayday, mayday, mayday. So, we included that in 2024, the HVA system. So we added that as a list.
Ellen?
Yeah, what additional work is needed at the sports complex for $1 million each?
2 phases.
What
So,
are they?
so you have more fields. You have more fields to build
More fields.
In a building.
and a building.
Are they all soccer kind of fields?
They're all rectangular fields.
No baseball?
Please don't use the
no
word
baseball or
soccer.
anything?
Please use the word rectangular.
Rectangular, okay.
Thank you. Because there's folks that are football people, and you hear that word, it's like, we're getting nothing. So please, they're rectangular fields for every rectangular use.
HVAC improvements, there was no grants available, particularly with all the,
We got on the wrong end of that one. We
were
tried
you
to
not
get,
prioritized at that?
no, we did it
At that
last
time?
minute. We didn't have time.
Yeah.
We tried, what stirred the pot on that was the grants for the COVAD. And what we kind of got involved with it towards October, November. And you had to have it by December or something, Derek?
Yeah, we had to have the project contracted
Yeah.
by the end of that year, the 20, or the 31st of December, and there wasn't sufficient time to develop a bid spec, get it out there, and get bids in to
I
have
got
it
numbers.
contracted.
I got numbers on how much it would cost from a local individual, but, no, we lost it. That was a bummer.
Can't do everything.
That it's a, I mean, in the scheme of it, it's a big number in itself, but it's dwarfed by the others. Is that something that, I'm looking at, you know, how you move things around, it's probably not enough to have a big impact overall, but it sounds like that's a pressing need too.
Yes.
But I guess if you're gonna bond the pool, the year in which it's done is less critical because you're making the payments out into the future. Is that your thinking of having both those in the same year?
Well, I'll help you out. What really started to come about is looking at these large sums of money. And it almost makes sense to say, okay, fine, you have a $4 million project for a pool, all right? You have this $2 million to complete your sports complex. Maybe what you do is you get a bond, a recreation bond for $6 million, and you complete those 2 tasks. That was conversation that we had at the Parks and Rec Commission meeting. However, I'm going to caveat and say, that's above our pay grade. It really is. These are suggestions, it's good thoughts, but, you know, I think you're almost kind of at that point now. And unfortunately, I sit and I listen to all our departments' needs, various departments, schools. I think we got to get our brains together and say, how are you going to lump this together? Because everything, what do we do historically? Historically. And I get it, I respect it, I understand it, but we got to put our brains together and figure out what to do.
Well, I'll look to Derek, but before we get, knowing these are large items that probably be bonded, I'm assuming, because we don't have time to raise them.
Correct.
That you can come up with a proposal of either lumping some or spreading them out on bonding, and that will determine timing.
Yeah,
as much
yeah,
as
if you
anything.
want, you know, if this committee decides that you would recommend it in certain years to lump some together, we can provide you with what we're seeing for bond rates out there now and what those, you know, those terms would be, so you get an idea how long you're paying for those items.
Okay.
If I was to list, if I, as the director, not as the commissioners, because the commissioners, I think, their big number 1 item is finishing that sports complex. Absolutely, finishing that. I agree with that. But if I had to look at it as a community thing, I think that pool is
100%.
is in bad shape.
Lauren had a question, and then Jim, and then Dan.
Oh,
Thank you. What are the revenues that the pool generates for like
Zero.
your summer program?
Zero.
It's a very reasonable rate, but.
It's a great rate.
So it gets you nothing, it basically pays for, I mean, do you think the community would have an appetite for increasing those rates as sort of a?
From zero to a rate?
For this, I thought the summer program had a low
Oh,
rate
no,
last
the
time I
summer
looked. Yeah, the
camp.
summer camp.
Oh, I'm sorry, the
So do
summer
you think
camp.
as part of like a
Sure.
capital,
I think you could.
campaign to say we're, trying to collect money to keep this summer program open with the pool?
I think that opens, I'll let Derek talk about the rules and regulations in municipalities and capital campaigns. But yes, you could look at doing something like that.
But it's not a great revenue generator, it's a kind of a wash for
I think
operations.
once you, if I was just to say, okay, if we were gonna have fees for something, as soon as you put fees at something, see you later.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have reasonable fees. And the thing that we do have to keep in mind is Olive Roy Park, Olive Barnard Park, back in the 70s, were all established with the LWCF funds. It's federal funding. So that stewardship for its lifespan is said that it's open to everyone. All right? With that said, I mean, you're still welcome to charge something, but you have to charge something of equalness. So in other words, if you had non-residents, if you charge $5 for a resident, you can't charge more than $5 for a non-resident. Or you can't go above, like 2 times higher is what I'm saying. You can't go 2 times higher.
Non-residents?
Yeah, well, we don't want to get into operational costs
So,
here,
and I
so let's
just.
stay within our
I-
jurisdiction.
I don't
so-
know where your brains go, but my 12 years, I know what I get asked later on, so I'm planting that seed, just so that you kind of have a seed. And it might convolute where we're going at this very moment, I understand, but.
But I think Lauren's point is, it's not a big item, but again, we don't have jurisdiction over the operational costs, we just have capital costs. Jim?
I was just wondering, with those phase 2 and 3, there's no contractual or any other kind of pressures to get that done right now, it's just, or are there?
And I'm gonna put my Parks and Recreation hat on, knowing that there is need for more rectangular fields. There is absolutely need for more rectangular fields, practice fields, okay? As far as game fields go, you still need some game fields. However, with this turf field coming in, if this turf field does become reality at the high school, that will hopefully give some room for games, not practice. It's not going to help anything to do with practices. I mean, the GHS and MVMS, they're going to need it for their games and practice as well. The community probably will be able to use it for games, especially if it's lighted. If it's lighted, absolutely. So that helps the cause, Jim. But it does not help the innate lower level of practices. We don't have enough there. So my long-winded response to you would be, can we push that out? The commissioners don't want to hear that, but I will say I think we can if this other field is coming in.
I'm not suggesting you do that, I'm just wondering.
No, and I'm just speaking honestly and as my own self.
I'd like to see it all tomorrow, but that's.
We all would.
Dan, you had a question?
Yes, so is there a contractor in place for the pool yet?
Oh, God, no.
No, alright. The reason I ask is, a long time ago, I was a lifeguard at a YMCA, they built a pool with South Shore Gunite, and they
Yep.
had nothing but problems.
Yeah.
Nothing but problems. We had to close the pool multiple times, it was cloudy. I'm just thinking, long term, the people that use it, they get frustrated because of that happening too. I just want to know that we have a contractor who's gonna come back if we have issues, so on and so forth,
When that time comes, sure.
Okay.
We'll create a pool
But then if you get the
committee.
lowest bidder, sometimes you're kind of out of luck.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, in
I know
our
how it
our
works.
wonderful world, sometimes you gotta go to the lowest bidder. Is the
Yeah,
lowest bidder the
understood.
right one? Eh,
Yeah, I don't want to get into specifications though on the pool yet, we're a long way from that. Ellen, you had a question? Or
Yes,
still on a big picture?
Does the $4,100,000 for the pool we term it the pool, but does that include the cost of closing down the Roy Park pool and putting in a splash pad?
No, it does not.
Whoa. Does this include probably doubling the parking at Barnard Park?
No, it does not.
I don't think it eliminates the Roy Park pool, does it?
No.
Well,
This project eliminates the Roy Park pool.
it-
No,
you,
just the
you,
barn.
you could, you
That's
could.
what it was proposed.
My thought is, all right, we gotta grow up here. I'm sorry. This town needs one pool. This town needs one pool. And it can be a wonderful pool for every resident of this community. We need to stop looking at this community and this community. We need to please come together and look at the astronomical amount of money of $4 million and say, okay, so do we still build another pool over there for maybe 2? It makes no sense to me. All for the sake of saying that it's this and this. So please, we need to look at that. And if it fails because of that, that's the people's choice.
That wasn't my question, though. The dollar amount, though, doesn't include the total cost of what needs to be done.
It includes the total cost to do that pool right over there.
It doesn't, there may be other costs.
But there's gonna be other significant costs.
Eventually. I mean, we could,
So that is
We-
just a larger pool.
And
it's the same footprint. It's the same
Same
footprint.
size. Okay.
And it will handle the number of people that are using these pools, it will handle it.
And Rick, that also includes a new building or shower house
That
as well.
includes, that includes locker rooms, or changing rooms, guard rooms, a true filtration room, and chemical storage room. Yes.
Okay.
Don't forget, when these figures come before us, they're not firm figures.
I
Yeah.
understand.
They're in the nature, we like to think of them, if we can, as more than placeholders, but they don't have contracts for them. It's,
No, I
So-
understand.
so-
I
And
just
if you
that-
look
that
I don't
at,
wanna
if you
get too
look at
wrapped up
this,
in
of this
specifics.
$4.1 million, engineering cost alone for that 4.1 million,
Yeah.
$338,000 for engineering.
but the point is,
Reality.
it's, on any one of these, we don't know the exact number until they go out to bid, so there could be more, but we know it's a big number.
Yeah.
Okay. Rick, anything else on Parks and Rec?
The only thing in the out years is Glen Lake waterfront, and we need to get that on the radar.
You put that out to 2028.
And I only put $50,000, and I bet you that's probably $500,000.
Okay, so we'll treat that as a distant placeholder at this point.
Yeah, but we really need to keep it,
Okay,
because it's
okay.
washing out, it's probably not good for the lake. And again, that's another facility that's probably 20 years old since it was resurrected. So, resurrected, when it was built. You know, so, I mean, this is, like I said in my introduction, I love doing what I'm doing. The hardest part for me is bringing reality to you people, to the select board, to the budget committee people, and the greater community of our town of Goffstown. These are things that have to be fixed.
Board, we've typically looked at these out-a-year things as placeholders, and we're not fixed. Don't come back next year and say, well, we put that in 2028, it's gonna stay there. We're putting them out there because they're not ready for prime time yet, but we've told the boards, and we'll continue to do them, that, you know, you can move things forward next year when you come before us. We appreciate that you're not loading it up in the first years, but we're not holding you to that schedule as we work through these other high priority projects. I think that's a fair way to deal with it. Jim?
Are you spending a significant amount of money to repair and maintain the pool now?
I mean, Jim, we put lipstick on a pig every single June, and we make it work. I use J.D. Weld glue, all right? and I put that on the skimmers to stop it from leaking. So that's not much money.
Yeah, okay,
But is it a pain in the neck? Is it incorrect? Is something gonna happen? Absolutely.
okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anything else on Parks and Rec? Ellen?
The priority for the Glen Lake is a 2, yet it's being pushed way out as placeholder. So
What did they do?
is it a 2, which is
Well,
what, necessary?
Yeah, I
or-
put it as necessary.
Is it a 2 but in that year rather than 2 that has to be done immediately? You can decide.
Yes.
This one.
Yeah.
Deferrable? I,
It's in the out years,
Yeah.
so we can, I have a hard time with semantics on this stuff when it's in the out years.
I think because it is so far out, I'm less concerned about the priority because we're disagreeing, we're gonna put out, unless, you want a more definitive answer now, but it's following some other projects and then
That's a
you
good
get
way
a
to look
chance
at
to
it.
focus on it. I would expect Jim Parks and Rec to come back in a later year and maybe move it forward, but we're not gonna ask you to do it now, if that's permissible by the committee. That's a good question, Alan.
It's very good.
Yeah. Okay, Rick, you've done good. Are you done with them?
I'm sorry if I offended anybody.
It's part of your charm. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're getting better every year, by the way, at doing this.
Smooth
So
operator.
kind.
Derek?
And I think you're a good leader of this.
Well,
I love how you set the stage every single year.
Yeah.
You do a wonderful job of that.
And I didn't even get a ride in the dump truck for that.
But I do want to drive the fire truck.
Okay. Derek?
Yes, so this year, Town Hall has 2 projects that are on the matrix. The administration tab is your second tab in your book, and we're also on page 5 of 9 of the matrix at line 158 or 159 and 160. The first item is, and this is in the matrix as a 2023 project, but it likely would be moved out to 2024 or 2025. This is the elevator addition on the rear of Grasmere Town Hall. Grasmere Town Hall has been renovated by the town and the Historic District Commission for the last 20 years. The second floor theater on page 5 of 9.
Thank you.
The second floor theater has been fully restored using a variety of different grants, donated materials, as well as a bit of taxes that have gone to a capital reserve fund. At this point, the final elevator in 2028 was estimated to be about $500,000. Working with the HCC, we are trying to get an updated number on that. We suspect that $500,000 would go up. The capital reserve fund that was funded in 3 consecutive years by the town at town meeting currently has a balance of $373,000, and that balance between the $373 and what ultimately is the cost of that addition would, the HCC is starting to begin that process of seeking out what is available for grant funding, whether it's through LCHIP or some other type of large grant that's out there, or beginning a capital campaign to seek out, see if there are any donors that would make up that difference. So again, it's in your matrix right now is 2023, knowing what the grant cycle is at this point. It's probably more realistic that it would be pushed out to 2024, and that's a desirable project. Again, the second floor is fully restored, but there is no ADA access. There's no way that all the residents of Goffstown can make use of that space at this time.
Does that mean it's not usable, or it's being used, but it's not?
It is usable. We do use it through our facility use policy. So we do have some private renters. Last week we had a small dance company that used it for a dance recital. However, we cannot use it for official town or school functions because it does not have that ADA compliance. So we can't have meetings up there or anything like that.
I guess the question, the budgetary, but you've got a facility you've renovated, but you can't use. Should you get on with doing the full project, or you just realistically not gonna have the funds to do it in the next year?
I think the difficulty, what we've seen with the most likely grant source would be LCHIP to make up that balance. And the HCC is not at that point. LCHIP wants to see the plans, the design plans, and the true number of what it's going to cost rather than, so we are working with the architect now to see if we move forward with having the plans completed, the bid specs completed, and then going for a grant or not.
Anybody have questions on that?
How often is it used by the town?
By the town, the downstairs, the meeting room is used.
The upstairs, how often is it?
By the town?
Yeah.
It is not, because again, it's not
How
80.
often would it be, and for what purposes? When you have this and...
It would most likely be used by the Historic District Commission. There are some other private groups that use it. I know the HCC has done some presentations, some lectures up there. I would say at best, unless you had another group to manage it, you probably get a couple times a month at best. It's very hot. You can't use it in July and August simply because of the use of it, and so how much use it would get, I think they would need to come up with a plan on how they were going to market that.
Do they have any plans to put in anything to help with heat?
It is heated. The
Not the
entire
heat,
Oh,
I
the
mean
AC.
the
No,
AC,
not at this time.
like mini splits or
Okay.
something.
Go ahead, keep going, Derek.
That's it for that project. And then the only other project you'll see is in 2024. This is for our server hardware and our server licensing. The total cost is estimated at $260,000. This is necessary because we're currently running on Microsoft Server 2019 data center, and mainstream support ends in January of 2024. There is an extended end date through 2029, but again, these are servers that are running 24/7, 365 days a year. All of our buildings are connected through fiber optics, and we're able to work together and access, but these are really the backbone of our operations, and we need to remain also compliant for the police department's interaction with FBI and their CALIA certification.
Kim.
Didn't we just spend like $1.5 million for the,
No, that's a great question. In this year's budget, part of the CIP that was approved, and you'll see that on page 5 of 9 in the adopted budget, there was $262,000. That was for network switching, so that is for all our network switches. This is our servers, all of our data storage, that's not the switches. So again, part of our network backbone, but just a different component.
I thought that money was gonna take care of everything so that we're all interconnected. So
That's for the, yeah, that's just for the switches, and this
I
is
see,
for the
okay.
data storage.
Okay.
This is why it's more fun to hear the fire department, because they can go up in ladder trucks. He can say, I can take you on a ride in our server.
Can
but
grasp that.
It's not quite the same level of excitement.
But those were really the only 2 projects that are in the matrix.
Is some of this for the need for the, I can't use all the technical terms because I don't, because we recently connected everybody through the fiber optics. That wasn't in existence before, right?
The switches that they're doing this year are really required for that interconnectivity. As I understand it, again, I'm not an IT guy, but the servers are really your data storage, where you're, where everything's being stored, and where, again, everything now is computers. All of our documents, as well as dispatch, all of the dispatch logs, all of our financial, everything is servers, and we have not made the decision to move to cloud-based storage because of some of the drawbacks with that.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, thank you. A quick question on the Grasmere Town Hall. The Budget Committee recently had the opportunity to tour that. And I asked this question, I don't know if maybe you would know, when you bring it up to ADA compliance, do you see a revenue generating source there? Because if we make it compliant so the town and groups can use the upstairs, there will be no charge for that, right? Because of the facilities use policy?
We actually do have a facility use policy that does have a fee associated with it that helps some of those operational costs to have somebody prepare the building, supply the needed supplies for the bathroom, our connection to Grasmere Village Water Precinct. I don't think that it would be realistic to say, based on the location and the limited amount of parking, that it would be a big revenue generator. But I think you might be able to get to a point between the second floor theater and the existing preschool that is already renting the space, that you can start to set aside some money, but again, it's most likely going to be put right back into it for the upkeep. It's a building with a slate roof, with a block foundation. It's an old building. It's over 150 years old, so it would basically go back into the operation and maintenance of that building.
What else?
That's it for admin. We do not have a submission from GTV or Economic Development Council this year.
We don't, planning doesn't have anything because we put it all through last year.
Yeah, you did your master plan, I think, 2 years ago.
And
So-
last year was the flyover.
The flyover, yeah. that we're-
And do we have the rewrites, the regs?
You do, but that wouldn't be, that's not a CIP
Okay.
request.
That
That
was
was
in the budget.
operational in the
Okay.
budget.
Okay. So is that everything?
That is,
It's only 7:15. We can tell jokes in the next 45 minutes, so we can, Ellen will have questions. Oh, God, yeah. Go ahead, Ellen.
One, just because I'm one of the people who have trouble with that curb in the back, stepping up on it. It says here the repair, reclamation of the granite curbing and that stuff in the parking lot. There's no, anyone who has mobility concerns or issues, balance or strength, coming in the back, there's no, what do you call it, like a slanted
ramp.
ramp, thank you, to go up. They have to step up that curve.
Are you-
There's nothing to hold on to.
Are you talking about here or?
Here,
Oh.
here in the back. There's nothing for someone who's, has that issue to help them get up to the building where you can hold on to the railing and stuff. If something can be done back there, that would be helpful for a lot of us.
We'll definitely keep that in mind as we move forward with that project. We tend to advise those people that call ahead of time that ADA access is provided through the front of the building, because there is a compliant ramp that comes up. We also have our wheelchair lift at the front of the building,
Right.
and our automatic door openers. But that, yeah, we'll definitely keep that in mind.
That's, people, not everybody needs the ramp, not, but that step up, if you have a balance issue or a strength issue, you're gonna fall.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep that in mind as we move forward with that.
When it was snowing one day, I had to get Roger. Oh, I had to hold on to Roger because I was so afraid of falling.
It
agree with
can be
Ellen.
a problem. It can be a problem for some people, and I'm one of them, so
Okay.
I'll ask.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Does anybody have, you're the new kid in the block, do you have any questions about, procedure, what we're doing? Just, you're gonna see more of the same.
No, it seems good. Thank you very much for the explanations. I hope it wasn't too repetitive for anyone here to try to clue
It's
me
good
in, so I
refresher.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
But I ask a lot of questions, so.
Yeah, we know. That's
It's a good
good.
thing, we can
And,
always,
Derek has done a good job, I think, scheduling these to give us an opportunity rather than, piling us up. We know, Public Works tends to have a lot of stuff. School does, because that's a whole, world in itself. So those are full meetings, pretty much. And the police, we can just tweak them about the donut crumbs in their glove boxes. But they'll, same thing, it'll be quite a bit dark.
And I think the last few years, we've had success not providing you with an updated matrix at every meeting. Is it because I did make some notes, there were quite a few issues that I noticed that I didn't catch when I reviewed it, but if the committee's okay, what I'd like to do is move forward with all the departments and the school presentation and then provide you those corrections maybe after your last meeting. That way you're looking at, rather than having, 5 or 6 matrices.
No, I think, there's some gross error that we need to, but for the tweaks, I don't think we need them. You can make notes. Brad, you had a question?
Yeah, once you did, I agree that's the way it should be done. But then brief us on, or remind us.
Absolutely, yes.
Remind us is probably the right thing.
Just take a look on the first page, the schedule of the, on the notebook. It's under the first colored tab. Brian tells me that.
Are we on the matrix or the?
No, in the notebook.
The schedule,
This-
our meeting.
Yeah,
There we go.
this page.
Yep.
And you can see we have a fairly intense beginning of the summer. It's alternates with planning board on Thursday, so let's go to. And then when we get towards the end, the goal is to see if we need to do more deliberation, have people come back. If we don't, it's delightful. We don't need to carry this out to the full length. We schedule a planning board meeting, and we expect you all to come because we'll assign chapters to you to present to the planning board. That's a big event.
Can we do that now?
We just get it over with. Just tell them, same as last year with a few tweaks. So anyway, that just says, and y'all did a good job last year. So just looking ahead, we don't need to go into August if we don't need to, but if we need it, it's there. So it's a lot of activity for a short time with the goal of being done in July if we can. Then you can take August off. Let's go hot dogs.
I have to agree with what Rick said, too. A great deal, I say this is my, third or fourth year of this committee's functioning. The way you enable us all to be able to ask our questions and get answers, I think helps us as we get to the end, because we've already heard, or they can come back with information. I think that's really helpful to me.
Don't encourage Brad, though, to ask too many. Okay, with that, Joanne?
I just had one thing that I wanted to throw out there. I had a conversation with Scott Gross recently, and he was wondering, I know that we've all been using these forms for years and years, and he was wondering if there was a possibility in the future that the forms be eliminated and that the departments hand in a spreadsheet with the information, and then that spreadsheet gets incorporated into the
Yeah, I think,
matrix.
why don't you give us an example of what it could look like,
Okay.
so we can visualize it. And if it's a more useful format, yeah, and if it saves time, I don't see why we wouldn't be. We're not wedded to this other than by tradition, but.
So what you're talking about is eliminating the written narrative that we get. I kind of like the written narrative.
Well, we can look at how to pare it back, because it takes a lot of staff time to prepare.
Yes.
So we want it to be a useful tool and not a time suck for anybody. So let's see what's available. Okay, Dan.
So, just a heads up, I will be expecting my first child probably in the next couple of weeks.
That's a feeble excuse.
So the 16th and the 30th could be a moving
Okay,
target for me.
okay.
Just to be.
Okay, well, you were very loyal in your attendance last year, so I guess we'll give you a special dispensation. Congratulations, that's cool.
Thank you.
Okay, Lauren, you're the new kid in the block. Why don't you make the first motion to adjourn?
Oh, motion to adjourn?
Jim, will you start? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.